Tennessee falls by a final score of 36-7. I'm Eric Kane alongside Austin Price here on the post-game mini podcast. Austin, just not Tennessee's night, man. I mean, Tennessee got its tail whipped in every phase of the game at the line of scrimmage. Tennessee couldn't stop the outside zone. Tennessee could not run its offense via the traditional run game. Every time Tennessee felt like it had something going on, Missouri shut it out. Just a bad night in Como.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't have went any worse. You know, there's losing, and then there's just embarrassing. And I think that on all phases, Tennessee was embarrassing outside of maybe Jackson Ross. I mean, Tennessee's defense couldn't get off the field. Missouri extended drive after drive after drive. I mean, Tennessee's offense had the ball for 3 plays in the first quarter.
Yeah.
And then you look at the offensive side of the ball. I mean, they moved it between the 20s, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, they scored 7 points. I mean, there's no other way to put that.
This was Josh Heupel's lowest point total. As head coach of Tennessee. Previously, it was 13 last year at Georgia. Tennessee scored 14 at Florida in 2021, but this 7 here at Missouri, it's the lowest ever as Tennessee's head coach for Josh Heupel. Just not good. I thought, and I'm trying to pin it on him. I know I talked about it in the 2-minute drill, but I thought a big momentum shift in this football game. Tennessee a chance to at least tie, maybe take the lead. And Jalen Wright coughs the football up. And that was a long, lengthy drive, had a couple of nice plays. And not only that, do you not get points out of that drive, you completely gift wrap 3 points to Missouri to go up 13-7 at the half. That was a horrible sequence, potentially a 10-point swing.
Yeah, there's no doubt. You had a chance to take the lead or tie. And, Jalen Wright, made a mistake the first time he's fumbled since the Georgia game last year, I believe. And, then the defense just,
35 yards or whatever it was. Yeah.
No, it was more than that. I mean, 20 seconds on the clock. 20. And they ran it and got themselves in field goal range. And, I mean, and all of a sudden it's 13-7 instead of 10-7 or 10-10 or 13-10 or 14-10 Tennessee. And it kind of changed the complexion. You go to the halftime down 6, you get the ball to start the second half. You normally fair catch those kickoffs. You've done that for weeks. Yeah. Finally, they let D. He returned not only the first one to start the second half, but returned one about 8 yards deep, which was, mind-boggling, just because they never do that, right?
Yeah.
And you start, and then you run option to the short side of the field. Jalen Wright wanted no part of that. It seemed like fumble or
Cooper Mays jumped
on it, and you're playing at 2nd and 15, and you just have to punt it away, and just start. Missouri did what they needed to do. They won the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. They whipped Tennessee up front. They got under Tennessee's skin. Tennessee's defensive linemen, too many penalties. Sure, I mean, Missouri held, and they didn't call it, and that stuff happened. But I get it. But I mean, Tennessee, just got their tail kicked. There's no other way to put it. It's not like this was a close game and Tennessee kind of
The only time it was close is when Tennessee took the lead there briefly.
When it was 22-7 to start the fourth quarter, Tennessee was in the game, okay? But, as far as, just how the game had played, it didn't feel like that, right? It felt like a lot worse, They were still in the game, and then, again, we talked about this on the 2-minute drill. I mean, you got them backed up to the 6-inch line, and you let, Cook, look like Matt Mock out there in the 2001 SEC Championship game, picking up first downs with his legs, and, I think just a bad night, an embarrassing game, an embarrassing performance, and now you have Georgia come to town. If they win this game against Ole Miss, they'll be the number 1 team in the country. They'll have clinched the East, and Tennessee's got to figure out, do they have anything to play for? Next week. What kind of team shows up, because the one out there tonight in the second half looked like one that had kind of melded in. I know the coaches kept throwing them back out there and playing those starters all the way to the end, but that group did not look like they wanted to be here after a certain point.
I thought Tennessee's linebackers were so incredibly slow tonight. I thought Tennessee's defensive backs, there were some busts. I mean, you let Mookie Cooper or whatever his name is run just wide open. I mean, there was a couple of times they had receivers that were just wide open. And there were sometimes you were in man coverage and you were just slow. And there was just too many wide open guys to where Brady Cook could find it and just connect with ease. I thought linebackers were slow. I thought in the first half, Tennessee had 3 sacks and 5 TFLs. I thought, sure, you lost contained some, but you were getting to the quarterback and you were affecting the quarterback. In the second half, it was completely gone. That was not there for Tennessee's defensive line anymore. Let's talk about a positive. Unfortunately, he went out with an injury there, but what are you laughing at?
Yeah, I mean, was there one?
There was one, literally. Two, if you want to count Jackson Ross. But I thought the throw from Milton to Dante Thornton was gorgeous. I thought Dante's catch was great.
The fact that he looked like he, ripped his ankle up pretty good and still held on to the ball, was more impressive than anything. So yeah, I'm with you. I mean that was good to see, and we'll see how he's going throughout the rest of the week. But overall, it's just Tennessee couldn't stay in drives. Tennessee could not stop the outside zone. It just kind of was what it was. And you mentioned the Georgia game next week. Man, I mean, you talk about this leadership, and if there's ever a time, it's now. I mean, you got to come back in, because if you put forth that effort that you had tonight, I mean, you're going to lose 50-0. You got to come out and respond in a big way, and I think you will. You're going to be playing back at home, and you'll have your band and everything, the home atmosphere and all that. But you got a really good team coming to town next week, and you got to flush this one, learn from it, flush this one, and move on. Yeah, you do. I mean, they've got to figure some things out. I mean, again, you look at kind of the body, the body demeanor and the language and all that of this team. It just looked like one that. I mean, Joe called it comparable to Florida. I mean, I think it was worse.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you scored 7. You scored 7. At the end of the day, I mean, Joe's numbers are fine. He was 17-22 in the first half.
I'll need to go back and watch the pick six. I was on the field. I mean, it's probably a bad decision, but I mean the fumble there with him and Dylan
At that point,
Sampson,
though, like you're down. Yeah. At that point, you're down 29-7.
Yeah, and you're just trying to make a play. It was third down.
I don't care about that pick six. Like that had no bearing in the game. You were down 29-7. At that point, he had played pretty well. He was 17-22.
230
through 3 quarters. He threw for 166 in the first half. Threw for 267 for the game. So if you go back to the Alabama game, he did basically the same thing. Threw for about 175 yards in the first half, and then threw for about 100 in the second.
Yeah.
And that 100 just isn't going to get it done when Tennessee couldn't run it. And, it's not like he had the complimentary running game.
No, he had nothing. He had nothing. I mean, Jalen Rod, Jabari Small, Dylan Sampson. There was just not a night where. It was very much a night like it was at Alabama, where you had no run game to your disposal. You looked at me at the start of the fourth quarter. You said, about 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, you said Joe Milton's going to backdoor 300 here. He did not throw for a single passing yard after that. It was 230, and he finished with 230.
No, he finished with 260. That was through the third quarter.
I'm looking at the stats. Yeah, sorry.
He finished with 267.
Okay,
he threw for 101 yards in the second half.
Still, point remains. It just got away from him.
Well, I'm not a big fan of leaving your starters in there at the end. I'm not a big fan of, not getting some young guys some work. I'm not a big fan of attempting a field goal with 30 seconds to go, trying to get to double digits.
Yeah.
At some point, just admit you got your tail kicked and go regroup next week. I'm not a big fan of leaving the older guys in. The younger guys need work. You need to start figuring out what you have in some of these players, and whether it's Addison Nichols. And he came in only because Ollie Lane got hurt.
Yep.
That's ridiculous. You were down 29-7 before the pick six. He should have been in then.
Yeah.
And then at 36-7, he should have been in. It shouldn't have taken an injury for him to come into the football game. It shouldn't take an injury for some of these guys to get in there, and yet that's kind of what we saw tonight.
This guy's about to kick us out of here, so we're going to be brief. There's not much else to say. Again, though, just a horrible night in Columbia. We end with this. Is it just me, or is all these losses – I'm not really going to go back to 2021, but, Tennessee's not lost a lot of games the last couple of years. But when you do lose, it's just horrible. It's ugly. It's a horrible night. It's a no-show. It gets sloppy at the end. Think about the end of the Florida game. Think about, of course, South Carolina. It's like this team doesn't lose, but when it does lose, it's just it does a no-show. Tennessee didn't show up here today.
Yeah, again, they played well enough in a few spots to be hanging around.
Yeah.
And could not find any juice at all to even make Missouri doubt themselves. Missouri never had any doubt they were going to win this game. Tennessee had opportunities in the second half to either take the lead to start the second half or make this a one-score game in the fourth quarter, and you did nothing with it. Like, they've got to figure out some way to kind of get some juice for next week, because you're looking at a group of older guys that will be back out there again next week. What do they have to play for outside of they're playing the number one team in the country? That should be their motivation. But, again, they should have been motivated tonight, because Ole Miss is hanging around with Georgia 14-14 as we tape this. Had you won this game and Ole Miss wins, you're playing for the East. Now you're playing for nothing outside of playing for, trying to beat the number one team in the country.
Yeah,
and as good a bowl as you can.
And you want to look good individually. You want to look good on tape against the number one team in the country.
Sure.
Too. So that's also some motivation. Can't sit around here and feel sorry for yourself. Got to look at it, flush it, and move on. Just a horrible night in Columbia, Missouri. Final score: Tennessee falls by a score of 36-7.